The scene opens in a quaint, picturesque village, usually bustling with life, now overflowing with a palpable sense of relief and burgeoning joy. The villagers, their faces etched with years of unspoken fear, are now radiant with the news they've longed to hear. The village witch is dead. A collective sigh of liberation sweeps through the cobblestone streets. Just then, a vision of ethereal beauty descends Glinda, a fairy, graceful and serene. A gentle confirmation of the witch's demise ignites an explosion of unbridled happiness. Years of living under a shadow instantly lift. With newfound courage, the villagers stare down the dreaded posters of the witch, symbols of their past anxieties, ripping them into shreds as if banishing the darkness itself. As Glinda prepares to depart, a small figure, a little girl with wide innocent eyes, steps forward. A voice, soft yet piercing, cuts through the lingering celebratory air. "How is a witch made fairy?" she asks, her brow furrowed with genuine curiosity. "And why does everyone consider her so bad?" Glinda's radiant smile fades, replaced by a thoughtful, serious expression. She kneels down, her gaze meeting the child's innocent one. In a tone filled with a profound understanding, she begins to unravel a truth far more complex than the villagers' simple joy. "These witches," she says gently, her voice carrying a hint of sorrow, "they are not born bad, child, they are made bad. It is our own unkindness, our prejudice, that twists them into what we fear." And with that, the vibrant present dissolves, and we are drawn into the mists of the past to witness the birth of a child unlike any other Elphaba. Even in her first moments, she was marked by difference. Her skin, an unusual emerald green. Her father, the general, a man of rigid expectations and perhaps hidden fears, recoiled from his own daughter. A wave of paternal rejection washes over the scene. As Elphaba grew, it became clear she was touched by magic, an extraordinary gift that only served to further isolate her. When strong emotions surged within her, sorrow, frustration or anger, the world around her would respond in chaotic ways, objects lifting and swirling in the air, a visible manifestation of her inner turmoil. The warmth of familial love remained elusive, a constant ache in her young heart. Time moved on, and Elphaba's unique circumstances only amplified her solitude. She was an outsider, someone to be avoided, someone no one truly embraced. Yet amidst this isolation, a fragile bond formed with her younger sister, Rose. Rose, blessed with delicate beauty, but burdened by a physical handicap, a lame leg, became the recipient of Elphaba's fierce and unwavering affection. Elphaba's love for Rose was a beacon in her otherwise lonely world. One day, in a moment of innocent storytelling, Elphaba shared a tale with Rose and a group of other children. But childhood innocence can turn cruel. The children, perhaps mimicking the prejudices they had witnessed, began to mock Elphaba, their laughter sharp and unkind. A surge of protective anger coursed through Elphaba. Without conscious thought, her magic flared. Stones lifted from the ground, as if guided by an invisible hand, striking the tormenting children. News of this incident reached the general. His face, already hardened by disapproval, now contorted with rage. He saw not a child lashing out in defense, but a confirmation of his fears. In a swift, heart-wrenching act, he separated the two sisters, taking Rose away, leaving Elphaba alone once more, abandoned to her strange reality. The scene fades, leaving a lingering sense of injustice and profound loneliness. We are then brought back to the present, to Glinda and the villagers. The initial jubilation has now manifested in a grand, newly erected statue, a monument to the very witch they had feared. But Glinda, her face etched with a sorrowful understanding, raises her hand, and with a flicker of magic, the effigy bursts into flames, the villagers watching in stunned silence as their symbol of hatred crumbles to ash. As Glinda prepares to leave once more, another young girl, bolder than the first, steps forward. Her eyes hold a keen curiosity. "Was Elphaba your friend?" she asks, her gaze direct. "Is that why you speak of her this way?" A wistful expression softens Glinda's features. "Perhaps not a friend, child," she replies, her voice tinged with a complex mix of emotions. "But I knew her very well." And with those words, the present dissolves again, and we are transported to a time when Elphaba and Glinda's paths first intertwined. The grand halls of a university come into view, bustling with aspiring students. Glinda is already there, her presence radiating confidence and charm. On this very day, Elphaba arrives, her purpose solely to ensure her beloved sister Rose is admitted. For herself, the possibility of formal education remains a distant dream, denied by her father's decree. The formalities of introduction begin. A teacher approaches Rose, her demeanor overly solicitous, bordering on obsequious, clearly influenced by Rose's status as the general's daughter. Elphaba's brow furrows with disapproval at this preferential treatment. As the teacher attempts to lead Rose away, Elphaba instinctively intervenes, her voice firm, but her plea is dismissed. A surge of protectiveness and indignation rises within Elphaba. Her magic, ever responsive to her emotions, flares once more. Rose's wheelchair grinds to an abrupt halt, defying any physical force. Simultaneously, other objects in the vicinity begin to tremble and lift. The university principal witnesses this extraordinary display. A flicker of understanding crosses the principal's face. She recognizes the potential danger Elphaba's uncontrolled powers pose in a world quick to judge and fear what it doesn't understand. With a swift decision, the principal steps forward, subtly implying that she was the one who wielded the magic, effectively shielding Elphaba from immediate suspicion and hostility. Then, turning to Glinda, the principal requests that she take Elphaba to her room. Glinda, ever agreeable, readily accepts. But Elphaba hesitates, her mind still fixed on returning home. However, the principal gently but firmly guides Elphaba to a private room. There, she speaks not of condemnation, but of wonder, praising the raw power that resides within the young woman. She offers Elphaba an opportunity, a chance to learn, to control the very magic that sets her apart. A wave of unexpected joy washes over Elphaba, a glimmer of hope in her often dreary existence. But the elation is fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the stark reality of her father's disapproval. The principal, sensing her hesitation, offers reassurance, promising to speak with the governor, to advocate for Elphaba's admission to the university. A fragile smile touches Elphaba's lips. Later, arriving in Glinda's room for the night, Elphaba is met with a scene of disarray. Glinda's belongings are scattered haphazardly, leaving no space for her unexpected guest. When Elphaba attempts to clear a small area for herself, Glinda protests, a hint of annoyance in her voice. The tension in the room escalates. Elphaba's frustration mounts, and once again, her uncontrolled magic manifests. Objects lift, some crashing against a glass, shattering it. In a defiant act, Elphaba sweeps Glinda's things aside, creating her own small space, before finally succumbing to exhaustion. The night passes with intermittent bickering over the shared space, their clashing personalities creating a palpable friction. Word of their unusual roommate situation spreads among the other students. By morning, a clear division has formed. A team has coalesced against Elphaba and Glinda, though Glinda herself remains untouched by the ostracization directed at her green-skinned roommate. Elphaba finds herself utterly alone, the target of whispers and disdain. In the mess hall, the isolation is stark. Every table is filled with chattering students, except for the one where Elphaba sits, a solitary figure amidst a sea of averted gazes. In class, the subtle mockery continues, a constant undercurrent of prejudice. However, an unexpected connection forms in one of their classes. The professor, an animal himself, struggles to pronounce Glinda's name correctly. Elphaba, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in his vulnerability, steps in to support him, her words gentle and reassuring, normalizing his difficulty. A flicker of gratitude crosses the professor's face. As the professor begins his lecture, he speaks of a time when humans and animals coexisted peacefully. But then, driven by scarcity and self-interest, humans began to exploit animals, first for sustenance, and then, with increasing cruelty, for servitude. His voice cracks with a deep sorrow as he observes the continued prejudice against animals within the very lecture hall. He quietly excuses himself, his pain evident. Elphaba, who has known the sting of being treated as an outsider her entire life, understands his anguish. She follows him, her heart filled with empathy. In that shared understanding, an unlikely friendship blossoms. The scene shifts, and we see Elphaba under the tutelage of the principal, diligently working to master her magical abilities. She demonstrates impressive control, levitating objects with grace and precision. But the moment frustration or anger surfaces, the controlled movements devolve into chaotic destruction, the objects twisting and shattering. The principal, however, doesn't express anger. Instead, a look of awe spreads across her face, recognizing the immense, untamed power within Elphaba. One evening, as Elphaba approaches the professor's quarters, she overhears a hushed conversation. He is speaking to his fellow animals, his voice filled with despair. They are planning to leave, their hope extinguished. "We have no place here anymore," he laments. "The day is not far when humans will seek to eliminate us entirely." Elphaba's heart sinks at his words. As she turns to leave, the professor notices her. He calls her in, his expression warm and welcoming. In that moment, he offers her a genuine kindness she has rarely experienced. Touched by his sincerity, Elphaba makes a heartfelt promise, her voice filled with conviction. "I will help you," she vows. "I will help you fight for your rights." With those words echoing in the air, Elphaba departs, venturing into the nearby woods. There, a chance encounter occurs. A young man on horseback approaches, his eyes widening with fear and surprise at the sight of Elphaba's green skin. It is revealed that this startled traveler is none other than the prince. Meanwhile, back at the university, the news of the prince's arrival has created a buzz of excitement, particularly among the young women. Glinda, ever conscious of appearances and social standing, meticulously prepares herself, her intention clear: to capture the prince's attention. When the prince finally arrives on campus, his demeanor is somewhat aloof, his gaze seemingly indifferent to the eager faces around him. However, Glinda, radiant and undeniably the most captivating student, makes a determined effort to engage him. Her charm eventually breaks through his reserve, and a connection begins to form. She leads him to the university library, hoping to further impress him. But in the quiet sanctuary of books, a less flattering side of the prince emerges. He disregards the rules, his behavior becoming increasingly disruptive. He climbs on stacks of books, his actions disrespectful and childish. The librarian, aghast at this desecration of knowledge, expresses her displeasure. In response, the prince, with a playful disregard for decorum, begins to sing. Soon, Glinda and the other students join in, their voices filling the library with a light-hearted melody, everyone seemingly caught up in the moment except for Elphaba, who observes the scene with a quiet disapproval. Time passes, and the social dynamics of the university continue to unfold. A young man extends an invitation to Glinda for the upcoming prom party, but Glinda's sights are set on the prince. Ever the accommodating friend, she suggests that the young man escort Rose instead. Rose is overjoyed by the unexpected invitation. However, when she shares the news with Elphaba, her sister's reaction is one of immediate disapproval. Elphaba, still wary of Glinda's intentions, suspects a hidden motive behind this seemingly kind gesture. But Rose, blinded by excitement, misinterprets Elphaba's concern as jealousy, and a rare moment of friction arises between the sisters. Meanwhile, Glinda is shown meticulously preparing for the prom, her anticipation evident. Elphaba too finds herself drawn to the event. As she enters Glinda's room, Glinda's friends discover an unusual cap among her belongings. It is an old, pointed hat, reminiscent of the stereotypical witch's attire, belonging to Glinda's grandmother. In a thoughtless, perhaps even cruel, jest, they present the cap to Elphaba. Unaware of their underlying mockery, Elphaba, perhaps seeing it as a gesture of inclusion, wears the cap to the party. But as she enters the brightly lit hall, the laughter begins. Students stare and point, their amusement directed squarely at her. Elphaba, oblivious to the cruel joke, feels a flicker of warmth, believing that Glinda has, in her own way, made a space for her. The prom is in full swing. Rose, radiant in her borrowed finery, is happy, and Glinda is clearly enjoying the prince's attention. Elphaba arrives, still wearing the ill-conceived cap. The reaction is immediate and unkind. Laughter ripples through the crowd, all eyes fixed on her unusual appearance. Hurt and confusion wash over Elphaba. She removes the cap, placing it on the ground as if discarding the source of their ridicule. Feeling utterly alone, she begins to dance by herself. Her movements are awkward and self-conscious, only eliciting more laughter from the onlookers. Glinda, witnessing Elphaba's humiliation, feels a pang of guilt. Recognizing her friend's cruelty stemmed from the cap she had unknowingly provided, she decides to act. In a gesture of solidarity, she joins Elphaba on the dance floor, mirroring her unconventional steps. The laughter gradually subsides as the other students realize their insensitivity. One by one, they join Elphaba and Glinda, their movements now less mocking and more inclusive. It is a pivotal moment for Elphaba, a tentative acceptance into a world that had previously shunned her. The bitterness she harbored towards Glinda begins to dissipate. Later, in the quiet of their room, a genuine conversation flows between them, the first time they have truly connected as friends. Glinda, caught up in the excitement of her budding romance, confides in Elphaba. "The prince and I are going to be married soon," she whispers, her eyes sparkling. "It's a secret, just between us." Then, turning to Elphaba, she asks about her secret, her gaze falling on a small green bottle Elphaba always keeps hidden beneath her pillow. Glinda playfully snatches the bottle, hoping to coax Elphaba into sharing her confidence. But the bottle is not Elphaba's secret. It holds a far deeper, more personal significance. She quickly retrieves it, clutching it protectively. Glinda, slightly offended by Elphaba's reticence, retreats to her bed. But the desire for connection outweighs her pique. She approaches Elphaba again, this time sharing a painful truth about her own family. "My father, the governor, he never truly loved me," Glinda confesses, her voice tinged with sadness. "Because I was born different." Green. She reveals the desperate measures her parents took to ensure their second child would not share the same fate. Her mother was forced to drink copious amounts of milk, a misguided attempt to alter the natural course of birth. As a result, Rose was born prematurely, her fragile body bearing the consequence her lame leg. And tragically, Elphaba's mother did not survive the ordeal. A wave of guilt washes over Elphaba as she absorbs this devastating revelation. She sees a direct link between her own birth and her sister's suffering, her mother's death. "It's my fault," she whispers, her voice choked with emotion. If I hadn't been born this way. Seeing Elphaba's profound distress, Glinda gently refutes her self-blame, offering words of comfort and reassurance. To lift her spirits, Glinda offers Elphaba a makeover, a transformation of her outward appearance. The next day, when Elphaba walks through the university halls, she is met with a different reception. Students turn their heads, not in mockery, but in admiration. Even the prince pauses to speak with her, his interest piqued. But Elphaba's thoughts are elsewhere. She is on her way to meet her friend, the animal professor. However, the world outside the university walls is becoming increasingly hostile towards animals. Fearful for their safety, the professor and his community are preparing to leave, their time at the university drawing to a sorrowful close. It is their final class. But before they can depart, a teacher arrives with security guards, their presence cold and authoritative. Their animals are forcibly removed, their pleas ignored. Elphaba watches this injustice unfold, her heart aching with helplessness. She yearns to intervene, to protect her friend, but she is powerless against the prevailing prejudice. A new professor arrives to take the animal professor's place. His first act is to bring a small lion cub into the classroom, placing it in a cage. The message is clear. The era of coexistence is over. Animals are no longer equals. They are now to be confined, controlled, and treated as curiosities. The sight of the caged cub ignites a spark of anger and a deep sense of injustice through Elphaba. The very notion of these magnificent creatures being confined, stripped of their freedom, ignited a fire within her. Her emerald eyes flashed with intense anger, and the air around them crackled with uncontrolled magic. The nearby objects began to tremble, the delicate petals of the flowers in the room lifting and swirling in a furious dance. The intensity of her emotion was so potent that it washed over everyone present, save the bewildered prince, rendering them unconscious. With a fierce determination etched on her face, Elphaba, the protector of the innocent, rose. Her sole focus was the helpless lion cub. The prince, witnessing her raw power and unwavering compassion, instinctively understood. Together, united by a shared sense of empathy, they carefully carried the small creature and, in a surreal image, escaped towards the whispering embrace of the jungle on a humble bicycle. Back in the silent classroom, the principal arrived to a scene of inexplicable stillness. The unconscious forms of her students and the bewildered new professor lay scattered around. A knowing smile touched her lips. Elphaba's magic had reached a new formidable level. A thrill coursed through her as she recognized the immense power she could potentially harness. With a swift hand, she penned a letter to a renowned magician, her mind already envisioning the possibilities. Deep within the verdant sanctuary of the jungle, a different kind of tension arose between Elphaba and the prince. A spark, unexpected and perhaps unwelcome, had ignited between them. As a heated argument reached its crescendo, the prince, his face flushed with anger, turned to leave. But Elphaba, in a moment of vulnerability, reached out and gently held his hand. A flicker of affection, a tender emotion she had rarely allowed herself to feel, stirred within her. Yet, the stark reality of their disparate worlds crashed down upon her. A green-skinned outcast and a prince, their paths could never truly converge. With a quiet resignation, she released his hand, leaving the unspoken feelings to linger in the air. They returned to the university, the weight of their unspoken connection hanging between them. The following day, a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air. The university held a momentous surprise for Elphaba. A summons had arrived, a request for her to meet the great magician himself. The principal, ever the opportunist, had extolled the virtues of Elphaba's extraordinary magic. For Elphaba, this was a beacon of hope, a chance to understand and perhaps even use her powers for good. A peculiar green train arrived to transport her, a symbol of the unique path she was now embarking on. As she prepared to depart, a small crowd gathered to bid her farewell. The prince, his earlier annoyance seemingly forgotten, offered her a single, delicate flower, a silent wish for good fortune. Glinda too approached, her usual effervescence slightly dimmed. She confided in Elphaba, her voice tinged with a hint of sadness, that the easy camaraderie she once shared with the prince had shifted, a subtle coolness now coloring their interactions. Elphaba felt a pang of sympathy for her friend, but her own journey beckoned. She boarded the train, a mix of trepidation and excitement swirling within her. Just as the train began to move, Glinda pressed a letter into Elphaba's hand, her eyes filled with unspoken longing. The words within revealed a secret desire. Glinda yearned to accompany Elphaba, to share in this extraordinary adventure, but had been unable to voice her wish. Elphaba's gaze softened with understanding. In a spontaneous act of affection and perhaps a recognition of their burgeoning bond, she reached out, grasped Glinda's hand, and pulled her onto the moving train. Together, they journeyed towards the legendary Emerald City. The city that shimmered before them was the same fantastical metropolis they had glimpsed in the film's opening, a testament to the enduring impact of their arrival. A vibrant welcome awaited them. The citizens danced with joyous abandon, their movements a kaleidoscope of color and energy. They were ushered into the heart of the city, where the true nature of this magical place was revealed. A dazzling magic show unfolded before their eyes, a spectacle of wonder and illusion. Finally, the enigmatic wizard himself appeared. He led Elphaba away, offering her a vision of the city's future, a future he had meticulously crafted, a place of breathtaking beauty. Elphaba, ever mindful of the natural world, suggested a touch of warmth, a splash of vibrant yellow, to illuminate the streets, a request the wizard readily granted. He then unveiled a small puppet, an uncanny likeness of Elphaba, which seemed to suggest her future dominion over the city. But Elphaba's heart held no desire for power. Her voice resonated with a deep-seated compassion as she declared her true aspiration, to champion the cause of animals. For this, she sought the wizard's aid. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the principal, her presence eliciting a genuine surge of happiness in Elphaba. They embraced warmly, their shared history creating a bond of trust. Elphaba reiterated her fervent desire to help the animals. Just then, a monkey, seemingly guided by the wizard's unseen hand, retrieved a cloth-bound book from a shelf filled with arcane knowledge. The wizard explained that this particular monkey harbored a longing for flight. If Elphaba were to recite a specific incantation, he claimed, she could grant the creature its wish. With a hopeful heart, Elphaba recited the spell. To her astonishment, it worked. Wings sprouted from the monkey's back. A moment of triumph quickly turned to horror as Elphaba witnessed the creature's obvious pain, the unnatural growth causing it visible distress. Frantically, she tried to reverse the spell, reciting it backward, but to no avail. In desperation, she pleaded with the wizard to undo her magic, but he feigned helplessness, claiming his own powers were insufficient to decipher the book's complex enchantments. He implied that Elphaba's own potent magic was now the driving force, a force beyond his control. A wave of despair washed over Elphaba. Her noble intention had yielded a horrifying consequence. Outside, a chilling sight awaited her. An entire army of monkeys writhed in agony, grotesque wings sprouting from their backs, a living testament to her unintended cruelty. The horrifying truth dawned upon her. The wizard and the principal had orchestrated this. They had preyed on her compassion, manipulating her powers for their own sinister agenda, to enslave the animals they so despised. Fueled by a burning rage and a profound sense of betrayal, Elphaba snatched the magic book, her only weapon against their treachery, and fled. Seeing her escape, the principal, ever the manipulator, offered Glinda a tempting proposition: the tutelage of magic, the very power Elphaba now wielded. The price: to bring Elphaba back. Perhaps the allure of such power was too great to resist. Glinda, her face a mask of conflicted emotions, gave chase. The winged monkeys, now unwilling instruments of the principal's will, were ordered to hunt down Elphaba from the skies. The wizard too deployed his special guards, their mission clear: capture the green-skinned runaway. Glinda, the dream of wielding magic now within her grasp, drew closer to Elphaba. She pleaded with her to stop, to reconsider, but Elphaba's resolve was unwavering. She found herself in a chamber with a solitary hot air balloon, a fragile vessel for escape. As she clambered aboard, the wizard's men closed in. But before they could reach her, the palace roof sealed shut from above. The sudden confinement caused the hot air balloon to burst into flames. Elphaba and Glinda plummeted to the ground, landing in a secluded room. Glinda, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity. "You could have everything you ever wanted," she urged, her voice laced with a desperate kind of logic. "Why not accept their offer?" But Elphaba's heart remained steadfast. "My dream was never to rule," she retorted, her voice filled with a quiet fury. "It was always to help the animals." Meanwhile, the principal, a master of manipulation, spread a venomous narrative throughout the university and the city. Elphaba, she declared, was a thief, a dangerous criminal who had absconded with a powerful magic book. The news spread like wildfire, turning admiration into fear and empathy into hatred. Elphaba and Glinda overheard the damning pronouncements. Glinda, ever the peacemaker, urged Elphaba to quell her anger, to apologize, to return to the way things were. But Elphaba knew there was no going back. The betrayal cut too deep. The injustice was too profound. Instead, she opened the stolen magic book, her fingers tracing the arcane symbols. Glinda tried to stop her, a sense of foreboding washing over her. But the spell took hold, conjuring a simple, unassuming broom. With a newfound sense of purpose, Elphaba mounted the broom and soared into the sky, leaving the city and its lies behind. Even the wizard's magical tracking devices were unable to follow her ascent. As Elphaba disappeared into the clouds, the principal turned to Glinda, her eyes gleaming with a predatory ambition. She reiterated her offer of magical tutelage, their shared goal now to find and subdue Elphaba. A flicker of doubt crossed Glinda's face. Could she truly align herself with such a cruel and manipulative woman? Yet, the allure of power, the promise of becoming a sorceress, was a potent temptation. When Elphaba, from her distant vantage point, sensed Glinda's fateful decision, a sharp pang of heartbreak pierced through her anger. The one person she had tentatively allowed into her heart had chosen the path of power over loyalty. The city that had once held the promise of wonder now felt tainted, a source of deep pain. In an act of sorrowful defiance, Elphaba uttered a curse, a whisper of magic that shrouded the vibrant metropolis in an unnatural darkness. Then, with a heavy heart, she journeyed far away, seeking solace in the desolate peaks of the mountains. The narrative concludes with a poignant reflection. No one is born inherently evil. It is the prejudice, the fear, and the cruelty of others that can twist and corrupt an innocent heart. And in the final, bittersweet revelation, the reason for the villagers' initial joy becomes clear. Elphaba's death, the tragic end of a misunderstood soul, had lifted the darkness that had fallen upon their town, a darkness born not of malice, but of pain and betrayal. And so, the story ends, a testament to the destructive power of prejudice and the enduring tragedy of a good heart